Welcome, YouTube. This is Kian Sobani. I am here to talk about some journalism advice, and I'm going to get right into it. It's my first time ever doing a live YouTube video. So basically, if you're on YouTube and this is very impromptu, you wouldn't have gotten an announcement for it. If you're on and you're watching, welcome in real time. Feel free to chat. And if you're watching this after the math, well, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. I'm here to talk about Twitter, okay? How to grow your Twitter following. I'm going to start off with the question that came in my email just the other day. And instead of responding to this email, I'm going to actually record a video to verbalize my thoughts. And I'm going to send this link back to this person. Whoever else wants to partake in its fruits can do so. The email reads, "Hey, Kian, hope all is well with you. I'm just starting out my sports journalism career as a writer for X. And I understand having a strong Twitter audience is key to growing your personal brand and that of your publisher. I do struggle with this personally. Was wondering if you could outline some key tips for me in organically growing my Twitter audience and improving engagement to benefit both me and my publisher in the long run. What kind of content really sells? What about frequency, etc.?" All right, that's the question. Fascinating. And I just want to preface this whole discussion by saying I am not a social media guru. There are millions of people who are better than me at this. I am here to simply to speak my own personal experience about Twitter and how it works and how I've grown it the way I have. And there are people who have done it better than me. There are people who will never come close to me, but there are people who are infinitely better than me. I would actually suggest go and actually find a social media guru like Gary Vaynerchuk, this is his bread and butter. This is how I kind of got started in this. This was about 6 years ago, I believe. I read this book, Jab, Jab, Right Hook. How to tell your story in a noisy social world, okay? Some of these things are outdated, but some of these things will hold true. And let me tell you, the principle do say the same, especially how to stand out in a noisy social world. It's actually now noisier than ever, noisier than it was 6 years ago or whatever it was when I read this book. And it's even that much more important to stand out. Otherwise, you'll blend in, okay? So I'll tell you about my experience about growing Twitter. And look, if you don't want to grow your Twitter, that's fine. I respect that. I teach my clients to do that. I think personal branding is extremely important. We live in a cutthroat world. If you're looking to get into the sports journalism industry, you're very expendable, okay? People can literally just sub you in and out with anyone else to write generic Associated Press articles. And those they bring in, they can pay shit money. And basically those who really make it as a budding sports journalist, they have what we call leverage, what we call pull, a brand, an identity, okay? So, for example, Bill Simmons, if he gets fired from ESPN, what can he do? He's so big, he has millions of followers. Bam, starts The Ringer, sells The Ringer to HBO. Is it that simple? Obviously not. There's a lot that goes into it. Bill Simmons has dedicated his whole life, day and night. He works harder than anyone I know. And I don't know him personally, but you can just tell by the amount of content he puts out. The guy doesn't sleep. He just puts out podcasts, and he used to write a lot. Okay, so Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith, these guys, if they lose their jobs, A, they're probably not going to lose their jobs because they bring that company so much value. And B, if they do, they're not the expendable generic journalists. They can just go and start their own thing or get a gig elsewhere and they'll be fine. So I'm trying to teach you how to become that. And while I'm not that, I would say I understand what path I'm on. And I'm going to kind of just explain to you the little intricacies and nuances that come with growing your social media, because this is very difficult to do, okay? At the time of this recording, I have 19.3 thousand Twitter followers. It's not a lot. It's not a little. If you're watching this 50 years from now, I may have 19 trillion Twitter followers, or the earth may have blown up. It doesn't matter. Basically, I just want to show you how to get engagement on Twitter, okay? So I don't really believe in some of the more mainstream stuff you say or you hear about growing your social media. So, for example, a lot of the advice you might read if you Google, let's say, how to grow your Twitter, and that's not something I have done for the video. I generally stay away from that stuff because I don't think those mainstream ideas actually work. They're not practical. They lead people down the wrong path. And ultimately, what you want to do is probably get yourself a mentor, or you want to start mimicking or at least kind of learning from some of the greats on Twitter. So one of the advices you might see on Google is like engage, use hashtags. None of that stuff works. Okay. Let's be really honest. Okay. So when you use hashtags, and I've tested all of this stuff. When you use hashtags, it doesn't make a difference. No one cares if you use a hashtag or not. Some people may click on that hashtag to see what's being said about a particular event or a game or whatever, but no one is actually going in and you're not getting followers from that. Okay. If it was that easy, everyone would have 100,000 followers. It doesn't work that way. Another thing that Google might tell you to do is engage with people. And sure, that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with engaging with people, and in fact, I would encourage that. But I would say, do not start engaging with people and expect that you might get Twitter followers because of that. Doesn't work that way either. And even those people you get Twitter followers from that avenue, is that really gonna do anything for you? Okay, so here's what I want to say is that there is one kind of piece of Google advice that does work actually in this context, and that is be yourself. Now, what is the problem with quote unquote be yourself? It means nothing, okay? Because it's very much similar to like anytime you hear that advice, what does that actually mean? Okay, I have to be myself. Then you start getting in your head, what does that mean to be myself? Okay, how does that actually help you? If I'm like, okay, I'm myself in this tweet. Okay, Keon today is tired. He had a grilled cheese sandwich. Tweet. Myself, sit back and let the Twitter followers come. Doesn't work like that, right? It's not actually helpful advice, but here's why it is helpful, okay? It is helpful because to be yourself means that you don't have a filter. You don't worry about what people think of you. You don't care what people think of you, and you're not pandering to anyone, okay? You're just being true to your opinions, your identity, and for that reason, you have what they say a congruent Twitter handle, if you will. So, for example, some of my favorite Twitter handles are just amusing, funny people, right? And you can sense sarcasm in their tweets. They're funny. They get engagement for that reason. If you're a bit too robotic, no one's going to care so much, even if you make a valid good point. Okay, so be yourself is number one. At the same time, realize that if you have to be also cognizant of who your target audience is, right? Okay. So for me, if my target audience is football, my Twitter is mainly going to be about football. Okay. If I start tweeting about religion all of a sudden to my 20,000 Twitter followers, then they're going to be confused. Okay. So I don't do that. Okay. I may do the odd thing here and there that is very, very rare, but it's just, congruent to what I'm feeling at the time. And it's something that is interesting. I may put it out there, but it's not something I'm doing regularly. Right. So for example, me, I have unfollowed a lot of people. Is it because I don't like them? No. But is it because I'm confused as to what they're tweeting? Yes. I like to have my Twitter clean and what I'm interested in only, right? So my Twitter is kept that way. So if I see people kind of like off the rails and nothing's really making sense, I don't follow that person. Okay. So that's kind of some of maybe the baseline stuff that I wanted to get across. But there are more tangible things I want to talk to you about, sports journalism in particular, and how to grow your kind of following. Because if you're watching this video, it's probably because you are a budding sports analyst and you want to learn how to gain a following, okay? So there's two ways you can actually tangibly do it. So here is basically where you want to start taking notes. If, the first 8 minutes of this video, you were kind of in a haze listening to me kind of talk about being yourself and whatever, now is really where you want to kind of lock into the video, okay? Tangible things you can do to grow your Twitter so that it's relevant, good content, and you're reaching as many people as possible, okay? Football Twitter, for example, has a lot of accounts with a lot of followers, okay? So it's not too difficult to do in that sense. But what I want to do is get you to have a Twitter handle that is actually fruitful to your journalism career, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, my account in particular is maybe some people might resonate with that more because it's not anonymous, right? It's not a footballer as my avatar and a generic quote about Johan Cruyff in my bio. And it's me there with my face. I'm verified. I'm speaking to the people. Whereas some of these bigger football Twitter accounts don't have a name behind it. They don't have a picture behind it. They're not verified. You don't have to get verified. I don't really care about that. It's not to gloat either. But I'm saying is if you want your face out there, it's more difficult to do that than to just post messy highlight reels and have a quote about Johan Cruyff and start pandering to all the cryfistas out there, right? So I don't pander to anybody. Could I have maybe 40,000 followers by now instead of 19? Yes, I could have. Um, you may be thinking, well, if you could have, you would have. Hear me out. I've tested this, okay? So if I start pandering to, like, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo fans, and I start posting Cristiano Ronaldo propaganda all day, all night, trust me, my Twitter account will go up like that. But this goes back to one of my favorite Tim Ferriss quotes. Tim Ferriss says, it's better to have 1,000 true fans than it is to have 100,000 pasta fans. What does he mean by that? Ultimately, he can sell a product to 1,000 diehard fans better than he can to have 100,000 people who are just kind of following him. Okay. So I want real people, and I want people to know that I'm real and I'm not just this generic account that panders only to one niche audience. Okay. So I very much consider myself an analyst, a purist analyst, in the sense that I don't have biases either for or against a player or a manager. I analyze what I see, and I'm very unapologetic about what I analyze. I don't care what people think, right? So that resonates with a lot of people, but it also means that I lose out on a lot of people who just want me to praise Zidane all day. I lose out by a lot of people who want me to just slander Zidane all day. Same goes with every player. So I don't pander to anyone. Could I have 100,000 niche Zidane or Cristiano Ronaldo followers if I wanted to? Sure. But that's not congruent to what I'm feeling and what I believe in. So I want you to kind of take the stance of, you know, being kind of like a real person behind the Twitter account, tweeting your real analysis rather than pandering to anyone. That's very important. So that's why I say, like, when I have 19,000 followers, I really feel like that's an audience that can relate to me rather than, something that I don't believe in, whereas that has like 50,000 Twitter followers. Okay. So that's one thing. The other thing is too, I had a little bit of luck. How did I have luck? Well, I write for Managing Madrid. So the luck comes in that I get a lot of shout outs from the Managing Madrid Twitter account, which has made me basically grow my Twitter account more naturally and organically. Okay. Now, here's what I would say for everyone who doesn't have a Managing Madrid, which is a lot of people. Think of the people who have really big Twitter accounts who are not these vague football Twitter accounts. They're real people with real pictures and real names behind their Twitter accounts. How do they get a big following? Well, look at where they work at. So people who work for The Ringer, people who work for ESPN, people who work for The Guardian, wherever. These publications will often tag these writers, and that builds their following. So before I had Managing Madrid, actually was a lot of 442. 442 would often tag me. I would get a lot of followers from that. Whatever you want to do, you basically want to collaborate with people in a way that gets them to tag you, or you tag them and they can retweet. And obviously you kind of get a following. Now, understand this. There's no magic pill to getting a big Twitter following. And honestly, not that it matters. There's nothing wrong with doing this without getting a big social media following. One of my favorite writers in the world, Ian Hawkeye, author of, I don't have the book here in front of me, Di Stefano, okay? I had the pleasure of sitting next to him at the Santiago Bernabeu in the last Clasico, I think it was. Just by chance, he was sitting next to me at the press row. I had never met him before. I didn't even know it was him until I just shook his hand and he said it's Ian Hawkeye. And I was like, wow. And I started to fanboy over him. Great writer. He does not have social media. You won't find him. He's a ghost, okay? But here's the thing. He can do that because he's Ian Hawkeye, okay? Not everyone can do that. So if you want to make a brand for yourself, and this goes back to what I said in the beginning of the video, why it's important to do this, it's so that you don't become expendable in a cutthroat world, and you don't want to blend in a noisy social world, okay? The principles actually remain very similar to real life in Twitter in that sense, okay? So in a social setting, what you want to do, and you go in a room, you want people to notice you. You want eyes to be attracted to you. You want to be the center of attention. You want to be the party in the room. You don't want to be the guy that blends in. Same thing on social media. There's too much noise. There's too many smart people. There's too many funny people. And there's too many just entertaining people with big following for people to even care about what you have to say if you're just going to blend in, okay? So if you're not pushing people off the fence and kind of being out there a little bit, there's no point in doing this. You have to ruffle some feathers, okay? So you have to be happy and unapologetic to put what you want to put out in the world and make it entertaining, make people gravitated towards it. It's very similar to in real life than it is on Twitter. You walk into twitter.com, You're going to blend in and be unnoticed the same way you would go into a social setting to be blended and unnoticed if you're not actually kind of putting yourself out there. Okay. So you do want to basically try to work for a publication, or if you can't work for a publication, collaborate with people that have a bigger following than you. Okay. One of my favorite examples, if you want to learn from a Twitter account who's doing it actually way better than I did, and I would actually point you to at least go follow him. You don't even have to message him or anything. Just go follow him and look at his tweets every day. Alex Goldberg. When he first started out, he was working. I think he's still working for this a Serie A podcast with David Amoya, who's a friend of mine. So he was producing for him. He's a big Chelsea fan. So he tweets like opinions like constantly. And whether you want to agree with him or not, it doesn't matter. Okay. He's unapologetic and he puts himself out there and he doesn't care what people think of him. He's a great person to learn from. So he started a podcast on Patreon, which is called The Byline. It's Chelsea focused, but he talks about other things. He has big profile guests. I believe his podcasts are only on Patreon, but this guy tweets unapologetic Chelsea stuff every day, and people retweet the hell out of it. Like we're talking like thousands of retweets per tweet. And he's a really good guy to just go and learn from in terms of just being unapologetic and not caring what people think and not trying to pander to anyone. Really go check him out, Alex Goldberg. He's a fantastic guy too. He's a good person to learn from, far better than I am. But I'm just talking about my experience here. I think what you want to do is you want to collaborate with a lot of people. So that's how I started too. So I had this thing called Q&A with the enemy for Managing Madrid for the longest time. And I stopped doing it mostly because I don't have time. And I'm just focusing on too many other things. Q&A with the enemy was, I would look at the Real Madrid schedule, and before every single Real Madrid game, I would look at who they were playing and I would say, okay, I'm going to get a journalist for, let's say, if they were playing against Eibar, who's a journalist covering Eibar? And I would message that journalist. I would ask him questions, publish it on the website as called Q&A with the enemy. And I would tag that person on Twitter. They would follow me. They would retweet what I did. So that was a way for me to build a following. And I always encourage, if you don't know where to start, collaborate with other people, start tagging them. They start tagging you. That's how networks kind of organically arise. I'm going to do a whole video about networking. I think it's overrated because I think it actually leads to neediness and creepiness. And if you don't know how to network properly, you actually push people away and it's bad for your image. I'll do a whole video on that. But with Twitter, I really think what you want to do early on, especially, is to just collaborate with people rather than kind of just go in their mentions and start talking to them. I see a lot of accounts trying to get in the mentions of bigger accounts and thinking that's their way of getting noticed. But if anything, it just kind of pushes that person away and it creeps them out and it's kind of annoying. Don't be the annoying guy who just pops up in the mentions all the time. Do it in more of like, don't put the account on a pedestal, if that makes sense, right? Because the moment you do that, it makes it clear that you're down here, they're up here, and you're just being that annoying little kid who keeps getting into the mentions. Instead, what you want to realize is that we're all human. We're all at the same sphere. There's no, I'm not above you. You're not above me. No one is, even the celebrities, everyone famous, they're not above you. We're all kind of even. And the moment you start realizing that phenomena is 100% true, I'm not making this up. Once you realize we're all equal, you don't get kind of in your head. You don't get needy. You don't get creepy. You don't start, getting in people's mentions. A lot of accounts try to do that just to grow their following and get noticed, but it becomes a little bit counterproductive. It may not hurt you indirectly, but you just won't have a cool identity that people want to resonate with, right? If you're kind of being that needy guy. So I'll do a whole video about that. Networking, I think, is overrated, and I would train you to kind of carve out your own path rather than going in and trying to collaborate with other people in a needy way. But collaborate with people in a way that is kind of mutually beneficial, right? You're giving, you're taking, and you're helping each other out. They're helping you, you're helping them. And when you do it that you start tagging each other on Twitter, people's Twitters organically kind of grow. Here's what I would say. It doesn't happen overnight, and none of this is a magic pill. If you have like 10 followers, getting 1 or 2 additional followers is a big deal. Okay. It's a very gradual process. Once you get to 100, Twitter followers. Getting to 150 is a big deal. 160 is a big deal. Getting to 200, 500 is a big deal. Getting to 500, wow, 1,000. Once you start getting to 1,000, that like from 1 to 2,000 is just a massive jump. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I just doubled to 2,000. But it doesn't happen overnight. It happens very slowly. Here's the thing: people want to join things that other people are joining, right? They want to be a part of something, right? So it's a snowball effect. It very much is exponential growth, right? So when you get to 10,000, 10 to 15 actually happens pretty quickly if you're doing it right. Um, and 15 to 20 kind of kind of quick. It's not uncommon for me to gain 100 Twitter followers after a Real Madrid game. Okay. So, which leads me to my next point: know when to tweet and what to tweet. Okay. So, when to tweet, often I will kind of coast through the week. I'll post like engaging things that I think are interesting, news, reacting to, I don't know, just interesting, funny things in the football world that I think are interesting, funny, tactical observations or whatever. And I kind of coast through it. It's just kind of like just keeping your pulse on social media, giving, providing a little bit of value. People take it, they soak it up. When Real Madrid plays, it's like bang, two key moments: halftime, 40th minute, I'm already typing up my tweets. I'm creating a Twitter thread. Okay, all my tactical observations, my main ones anyway. Looking at the data, putting out a tweet, bang. So many people retweet it because it's halftime. Everyone comes online to consume content, right? To consume analysis. They want to know what people are saying. They want to know what a Real Madrid writer is saying about Real Madrid at halftime. So halftime is a big moment for me. It is not uncommon for me to get 25 to 50 followers at halftime of a Real Madrid game. And then after the game, it's a whole thing because we're doing podcasts, um, we're doing reactions to the game. So knowing when people are online is key. So if you're watching this and your kind of thing is not a Real Madrid game by chance, it's like a UFC game, whatever, that when people are online, that's when people are online. So be cognizant of when people are online and be cognizant of what hits. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what is interesting content and what's not. That's very subjective. I will say that what I find interesting, most people find interesting. And so for that reason, I'm not too worried. I don't overthink it. I just kind of tweet. It kind of flows naturally. For you, just see what sticks. Try different things and see what sticks, but also be cognizant of when people are online. So to summarize this video really quickly, 3 things you want to be doing: collaborate with people who can help you organically grow your Twitter. So if you're a journalist covering something, let's say that subject is about a Champions League game, find an analyst or another tactical person or another Twitter person to collaborate with on that project, ask them questions, then you tag them on Twitter, they retweet you, you follow each other, bam, one way, okay? Second, write for big publications, okay? So even if you don't have a job for publications, freelance. So let's say, I don't know, you reach out to 442. 442 accepts your freelance pitch. You write the article, you submit it, you get paid. They say 10 reasons why Barcelona are going to fail this season by your name. They tag you, Twitter followers your way. I think they have like 1 million followers, so I'm not sure. I don't know what it is, but either way, you'll get followers that way. The third thing, be yourself and don't be needy. Test what works, but be cognizant of when people are online, okay? Get the latest updated book of Gary V's, whatever he has on social media now. Not this one, because it's probably outdated, and it is outdated. I actually flipped through it before I started this, but it is helpful. And by the way, the concept of jab, 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 right hook refers to a sales pitch. So when we didn't discuss monetization in this video, we might in future videos, but the concept of jab, 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 right hook is when you're dealing with a large following and you want to sell them something, you don't constantly right hook them with buy this, buy that, buy this, buy that. You want to give them morsels of content that's not pushy, that is just kind of fun, lighthearted, light humor, light post, light content. It's not a sales pitch. those posts of light content, the light sales pitch, it's the equivalent of the jab, jab, jab. So let's say if I'm trying to sell you my Real Madrid book one day, okay? I would jab you a few times. Jab. This chapter is awesome. Jab. Did you know this story about Emilio Butragueño? Jab. Florentino Perez has a very fascinating story. And then I pitched the book. Boom, right hook. So the jab, jab, jab basically just sucks you in. Over time, you get desensitized and you don't even realize you're getting jabbed. This is not what I'm doing, by the way. This is just what companies do. The right hook is the sales pitch. So that's why it's called jab, 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 right hook. It's actually a very fascinating concept. And I would urge you to read Gary Vee's stuff. And again, I'm not the social media guru, and I will never be one. I'm just telling you what my experience on Twitter has been. And I really believe in growing your Twitter brand so that you're not expendable. And I also believe in doing it organically. And I also believe in doing it with your face and your name behind it so that you're not a Twitter account that is basically a meme account. You'll never be able to monetize it or actually do anything from it. And you're just sitting in your mom's basement and tweeting about Messi and Cruyff, right? Hope that's helpful. I will do a video on networking soon as promised. And I actually do get into a lot of more detail with my clients. So if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, personally, mano a mano, on Zoom or Skype, I do have a mentorship program where I actually do dedicate a lot of time to working with you one-on-one. You can go to keonsobani.com. I'll also pin a comment on this video where you can actually fill out a consultation form and work with me. And I'd be happy, really happy to help you out on your journey to become a sports journalist. And till next time, signing off.